My name is Mehera Saunders. I am a solicitor. I have been a solicitor for some time. I specialise in estate disputes, putting it simply. I have in the past, in earlier years of my career, spent a lot of time drafting wills, administering deceased estates after someone has passed away. But in more recent years, I have focused only on dealing with problems and disputes that arise after someone has died. We're in the internet age where there's so much information available, and personally I'm a big advocate of people using the internet to inform themselves and make sure that they have information from a lot of different sources. But there are big risks with that when it comes to the law, and particularly when it comes to succession and trust law. The reasons why include that in Australia at least, we have different legislation, different rules, different court processes from state to state. So often people can find themselves going on the wrong track because they have looked at a website that comes from the wrong state. We also, within succession and trust law, have rules about which state applies, and they are not necessarily determined by which state you live in. They can be determined by other factors, such as where a deceased person or a trustee lived, or where a property is situated. And sometimes in estates or trusts, depending on the circumstances, you may have some assets that are subject to one state and other assets subject to another state. So that's a very common pitfall. People get themselves quite tangled up in informing themselves in the wrong state. Another pitfall is that when you are informing yourself on the internet, you are putting in your own questions, which is an incredibly good starting point. However, it can result in you having a very piecemeal and incomplete picture of all the things that you need to know. And that's one reason why it's good to see a lawyer, because they can fill in blanks of information that you didn't know was relevant and therefore you didn't know would be a good question to ask. And I have seen people get themselves mixed up and actually suffer some big financial consequences from not doing that and taking steps on the basis of bits and pieces of things that they found on the internet, which were accurate in their own little encapsulated areas, but when put together as a whole, were incomplete and sent the person on the wrong direction. The other big thing to be aware of, in Queensland at least, is that it's possible that some of our fundamental legislation will be changed by new legislation, which may happen sooner or later. So it's very important, if you are obtaining information from the internet, that you actually then double check with a lawyer to make sure that that information is actually accurate and current on the day that you're relying on it, because big sweeping changes can occur not necessarily with a lot of notice. The other thing is that new cases come through every day from the courts, and they can sometimes change the way that laws are interpreted, and depending on the circumstances, they may have a big impact on the situation that you're trying to resolve. And so that's another reason why you should consider getting some advice, even if you're very well informed about the subject matter already, because you need to know whether everything's up to date and whether there are any other aspects of your situation that you're not already aware of that might have a crucial impact on the outcome. And as always, a little 2-second or 2-minute video on the internet is obviously not advice for anyone. And everyone's situation is always different, and for every law and rule there might be an exception. Sometimes there are myriads of exceptions, and so if something sounds too simple, just double check in case it isn't really that simple after all.